Hello and welcome to Career Talk. I'm Lee Hopwood, CEO at the CCMA and host of this live show where I chat with contact centre professionals to find out about their career journeys. And this is so that we can inspire both those working in our industry and be wondering whether there really is a viable career in this sector. And oh my goodness, there is. And here with me today is a great example of someone who has already had an amazing career in this sector and has still got many years to give. Andy, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Good to be here.
So, Andy, you are the Head of Customer and Colleague Experience at AXA Health. First of all, let's start there. Let's start today. You've been there coming up to a year. What is it you do? What does being the Head of Customer and Colleague Experience mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So it's I always politely describe it as a portfolio role, or the other way of looking at it is that it's a mishmash of all the bits that didn't naturally fit in the other parts of the operation. So I've got a really rich, genuine. It's one of the things I love about the job. It's really varied. I've got a lot of different hats I wear. So on the customer side of things, I'm looking after the complaints teams, our frontline risk, audit, and fraud teams, our vulnerability team. As well as a team that do effectively the interface between our customer service teams and the rest of our organisation from a distribution perspective. And then with my colleague hat on, I look after the training academy, so the training for all of our frontline customer facing teams, and then also internal comms and people engagement for our customer service. There's about 1,500 of us in the membership area, so we make up nearly half of AXA Health's overall population. So it's quite a diverse role because I can be talking around people engagement and risk within 20 minutes of each other, which always makes it, you wear quite different hats in those conversations, as you can imagine.
And such an important role, though, to bring all those parts together so that you've got that integration between customer, risk, and the front line.
Yeah, it's our team meetings. It was a new role that was created and brought all this together. So, but I sit in our team meetings now, and what we're finding is the dynamic where we have people who work in the risk and fraud space suddenly going, actually, yeah, we need to really more carefully think around what our training is, what our people experience is, in a way that maybe they haven't done in the past. And seeing some of the ideas that we're sharing and the way that those guys are working together is, and the I suppose the diversity of thinking, where you can just see kind of pennies dropping all over the place when in our team meetings. It's just really, really nice to see, actually, and just seeing how that dynamic is shaping over time.
I love hearing stories about how people are thinking differently, pushing boxes, and just really looking at how you can innovate, and especially in a sector like insurance where it's not known for its innovation. But let's go back to the beginning, because you've not always been insurance. First of all, what did you do when you left school? Did you do A levels? Did you go to university?
So I'd grown up always wanted to be a journalist. So I did my A levels. That was my chosen teenage thing, because I always loved writing. I was like, right, I'm going to be a journo. I'm going to go and work in London and Fleet Street and everything that went with it. So I finished my A levels, and I actually got an apprenticeship in the late 90s, working for a newspaper. And it turned out that local newspapers are not quite Clark Kent and Lois Lane. You end up sitting in quite a lot of council meetings until 11 o'clock at night, which as an 18-year-old isn't quite what you envisage it to be. So that was my original career path. I was going to go into journalism, and I was that, and then I went into publishing, and then I think as you do when you're younger, you're still trying to find out what you actually want to do, not what you think you want to do. So.
Do you wish you had now furthered your career in journalism, or are you actually quite pleased that you ended up having a fantastic career in contact centres?
Do you know, I think I look at what media and journalism has kind of changed a lot since even from the people I think in the newspaper I worked on, it's changed so much, and particularly print media. Print media is not dying, but it's really, really changed over the last 20 years. And I think obviously you've moved into the world of digital media and everything else. I think I might have had a nice career, but you know what? At 18, 19, it just wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be. So I'm very glad I didn't pursue it, I think.
That's a good shout. So you tried to go down that road, decided it wasn't for you. So where was your first foray into contact centres? Where did you start?
So really, it was the Chelsea Building Society. When I was working at the Chelsea Building Society. We were part of I suppose, like a sales relationship team, but we were very much embedded in the contact centre in the Chelsea's contact centre in Cheltenham, which is in a beautiful old manor building on the outskirts of Cheltenham, by Cheltenham College. And so so we were part of the contact centre there, as well as working with all the branch network. So it was very much working with all of the teams there, working with the sales teams. I started doing data and analysis initially, but then quickly, kind of, as you do, your role evolves and what you're doing evolves, and was much more involved more heavily with, in some ways, looking back, it was kind of training in some ways. It was training some of the frontline teams over and helping them do sales, almost sales development. But there was a large element of training, but working with the frontline teams in that role.
And that's 20 years ago. Did you know you were working in a contact center 20 years ago, or was it you were just part of the business? It was just all integrated into the business.
Yeah, no, it was very much. The contact center had its own, I suppose, its own personality. It was actually in a separate building in the grounds of this manor house, the sales and service teams. So you walked in and it was a buzzing contact center floor, and that was my first experience of it. And again, I can still picture some of the people I worked with and some of the colleagues I worked alongside there, and you did get a bit of a taste for it, of that front of kind of sales and service at the front line. And it genuinely was like, okay, actually, I really like being part of this. Particularly on the sales side, I was really sales focused back then. That was my thing. I'd become really quickly in my career. I was like, actually, I want to be at the cutting edge. I want to be the front line. I want to be working in sales, and sales is where the money is. Sales is where the fun is, and the buzz is, and the excitement. Because that seemed to be, there was almost two floors, and there was that difference. So yeah, it was very much in that sales space.
Do you know what? It's interesting, and I can see, and you can see when you go into contact centers, you can see that there is that difference, that different experience. That if you're in sales, you've got the bell ringing, and certainly if you're in the office, you've got that environment, and maybe there's a stereotypical, quite an extrovert person that works in sales.
Yeah,
not everyone, but service is a different environment. So from Chelsea Building Society, you moved to the property centre?
Yeah, so the property centre, we're an estate agency, and this was following I want to be in the sales world, and went into, I was a mortgage advisor, so I was a financial advisor. I was doing mortgage and insurance in actual fact, and so went there and really enjoyed it. It was, in some respects, kind of everything you'd imagine an estate agency to be, but at the same time, they broke down a lot of myths and barriers about it, because they work incredibly hard. And it was all face to face. It was in branch experiences, but the estate agents worked incredibly hard. They're incredibly passionate about what they did, and worked with some genuinely brilliant people there. Really, really good people. And yeah, so it was an experience. It was a wild ride, and it was then the financial crisis came along in 2008. But I really learned a lot while I was there around sales. It was about sales, but also it was around actually just the importance of looking after your customers, which the amount of repeat business that came back through delivering ultimately a good customer experience. Okay, it's a different industry, but it's around delivering a good customer experience, looking after them, delivering on service, and people will use you again and again and again because they buy into the people that they're dealing with.
So was that the first time that you recognised that link between sales and service, and that actually it's all very well being a salesperson and getting that over the line and it's all great and chasing the next deal, but actually recognising that you've got to look after your customers?
Completely. There was a guy, and his name was Phil. He was fantastic, and his sales figures were so far above the rest of us, like light years ahead of the rest of us for so long. And I remember I spent some time with him and said, so how do you do it? Like, because I've sat and watched your appointments and you're not doing anything that different from us. And he says, it's repeat business. He says, I just get repeat business because I look after them. And there was that moment I went, oh, okay. Yeah, if you look after people, they'll come back to you and they'll use you again and again and again. And you'll get that repeat business and life becomes easier. And it genuinely made me go, right, okay, I need to reassess. Instead of just chasing the shiny next deal, you've got to look after the customers that you've got, make sure that they get a great experience, make sure they get good service. And in the long run, your life becomes a lot more enjoyable and in many respects easier because you're not having to
Do you know what I was
business.
going to say? Yeah, it becomes easier because it's not so difficult to get the customers. So that makes total sense. So where did you go after the property centre?
So yeah, it was the property centre. It was the financial crash kind of made me reassess because the mortgage, as you can imagine, the mortgage industry was in free fall at that point. And also I realised I wanted to go into management of some description, and I was given my break going to Ecotricity initially to run their sales team, which is at that point it was a very, very small team. It was a team of 6 or 8, I think I took over.
That's a far cry from where you are today with a team of 1,500.
Yeah, yeah. I still remember it was, and that. So I went there as a sales team leader, and then I was promoted to sales manager, and then my role just grew and expanded over time while I was there. And I remember the day when I was first given accountability for customer service, because it was all contact center based, so it was customer service, and I was like, wow, this is different. I remember going, I've got a team of 40, and thinking, oh, this is huge. I've got a team of 40 people now, and suddenly we're looking after service as well. So you're having to think about things that otherwise, instead of just numbers on the board, you're having to think about, actually, are we delivering, what service are we delivering? Have we got good outcomes? And it was a real shift and a real moment of, it was a brilliant place, a brilliant company. I really enjoyed it there.
And I guess, so Ecotricity in what we're saying around about 2010, 2014, around about that time.
Yeah.
And the whole climate change piece was coming into its own more. It was really beginning to pick up pace 10 years ago. Is that something that you cared about? Climate change aside, but actually being in an organisation where it was looking to do something better?
Yeah, it's something, absolutely. I think massively. While I was there, my views on a lot of things changed. My views on climate, the environment, sustainability, all of that really changed for me while I was there. Almost through osmosis. It wasn't something that was kind of forced down your throat every day, because that's not the nature of who they are and what the people there were doing. It was just, you suddenly start to become much more aware of those issues. And definitely that kind of, the why of an organisation is that absolutely Ecotricity was founded on by Dale when he set it up, and he's pursued into Forest Green Rovers and everything that he now does, and he's quite famous for. That why is something that really, really does stick with me. That's something that a business has to have its why pretty clear for me to want to be part of it.
Yeah, and do you know, it's really interesting, and we'll obviously draw out where you've been since Ecotricity, but it's really interesting hearing how the different roles you had and the different organisations you worked for has really shaped you as a person and shaped your belief system almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you just learn from the people around you. You learn from the people around you. You learn from the culture, and it is through osmosis. You just absorb that stuff over time. Even if you try and resist it, you're still consciously thinking about it. So you're still picking out whether you like it or whether you know it or not. Yeah.
So you were at Ecotricity for about 5.5 years.
Yeah.
You stayed in the sector.
I did. So I was at Ecotricity, and a couple of people jumped ship to OVO, who were kind of the new boys on the scene at that point, or the new guys on the scene. And they were the real challenger brand at that point, going through that hyper growth. They kind of burst with Steve Fitzpatrick at the helm onto the scene in about 2009 they were founded. And they were down the road in Bristol, really exciting place to be. So an opportunity came up there, and I followed a couple of my colleagues and joined them. And it was a brilliant place. Every time I think about my days at OVO, I've got a big smile on my face. It was a really, really good time.
So what made it a brilliant place? What was it that you just, makes you smile?
It was, it's a cliche, but it was the people that were there. I remember joining, and within a really quick space of time, just sitting, and you'd sit in meetings and go, wow, the people that I'm dealing with and working alongside, they have experiences that as a kind of naive, even then, I was 30 or so, like, felt kind of, in some respects, quite green, and was like, wow, these people have done amazing things, and their experiences are just unbelievable. And so it was the people, but then it was also just that that period when you're in a business that is going through that hyper growth phase, everything is new, everything is changing, everything's possible. There is nothing that is off the table for what you can achieve when you're in a business like that. So we delivered some amazing things while we were there. That's when I first became involved in the CCMA. Working with some great people, learning with some great people, and yeah, the buzz of going into that Oval office will stay with me forever. Genuinely, it's just a time. I remember you just walk into that Rivergate office in Bristol, and there was just a buzz about the people and the place. It was fantastic.
Right, it's interesting that how hybrid working has taken some of that away a little bit. And I do wonder, you know, in 10, 20 years' time, those that are working in the environment where it's hybrid space, I wonder how they will reflect back on their experiences that they're going through now. And what's also really interesting is, again, I'm thinking back to you as a budding journalist, as an 18-year-old, thinking about, yeah, I'm going to be a journalist. And actually the things that you were looking for, the things, I want to do something different. I'm looking for the fresh. I'm looking for the story. I'm looking for the innovation. When you think about, maybe, I'm not so sure about Chelsea Building Society. I don't know at that time if it was a fresh thinking environment, but the property centre, that sounds like it was a fresh, innovative environment. Ecotricity, certainly much. OVO, definitely. And obviously where you went next, Dyson. Yes. And that's where I met you.
Yes, it was, yes. Yeah, I mean, the Dyson opportunity came out the blue. And it sounds silly, but it is that thing when an organisation like Dyson comes knocking and says, do you want to head up our contact centre? You sit up and take notice. Because OVO was, like I say, OVO was great. I was still really enjoying it. The job at OVO was evolving all the time. But Dyson was just an opportunity that was too good to say no to. Interestingly, the reason that the reason for me ending up there was because they said we recognise our contact centre maybe has got a little bit stale. We actually need to innovate a little bit in the contact centre space, in the customer service. We've seen that you've been part of the team that's done some really great things. We'd love you to be part of it. And it was Dyson as a company. The things that obviously the engineering, the technology, and everything is incredible. And then when you get in through the doors and you see a Harrier jump jet in the car park, and you see the aircraft hanging from the ceiling in a cafe, it is like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory on the site. But going in and just the opportunity to go in there and actually really make a difference to that place was it was too good to turn down.
So what is it that they'd seen you do at OVO? So I just want to step back to OVO and explore some of the things, some of the roles, some of the experiences that you had, the responsibilities, the jobs that you did at OVO that Dyson had seen that you'd done. What is it that you'd done at OVO?
I mean, you'll be pleased to know, I think one of the things was probably got some on their radar, and me on their radar, was being part of the team that won we won the EXAs, we won the CCMAs as Team of the Year, and the team being the key thing for me. So I think that was probably what put me and people from OVO on their radar. My role at OVO was we did some really innovative things. I went over there initially looking after as an ops manager, but that quickly changed. We set up a second line function, which was a completely new function. It was almost acting as the hybrid between the frontline teams and the back office operational processing type teams. And we were in the middle. So we were customer facing, but with more technical expertise. So it was effectively acting as that interface between the two. Completely new teams. We set up a customer forum. So digital self-serve, we set that up while we were there, which proved to be really effective and really successful, and it's something that actually we went on to pilot within Dyson as well. So I think it's probably just in the space where doing new things, doing things differently, and challenging convention. So not just saying, okay, we're a contact center, this is what we do. We're an operations team, this is what we do. Actually, they're really good at some stuff. They're really good at some stuff. How do we create that amalgamation of the two and combine them? And that was the big thing that we did with our second line teams. And as I say, the role then just evolved over time because new bits were bolted onto it and bolted on, and took on things like social media, which social media sort of 2014 was when it 2014-15 was where social media customer service was really starting to come into its own. So we were in that space as well, probably before some others were. So yeah, it was just a very varied role. Every 6 months, something new would be added to it, or it would change. Whether it was a new product line, a new service line, whatever you're doing, it was just continually changing.
Wasn't it around that time that you did a degree? Did I read that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah, so I did my degree when I was at Ecotricity. Yes, yeah, I'd always carried a bit of a chip on my shoulder about the fact that I didn't do my degree. A comment was made by a friend's parent when I was about 19 that I carried for a long time about not going to university. So yeah, when I was in my early 30s, just as my eldest daughter was born, I decided that I'd take on a degree as well, just for fun. And again, I'm really proud of the fact that I did do that, and it felt. I learned a lot about how much work you can actually do when you prioritise and you put your mind to it. But also it enabled me just to go, yeah, do you know what? I was smart enough to do a degree. I am good enough to do it, and just lay that ghost to rest a little bit.
And do you think it's helped you? Do you think that there were things you did in your degree that you then took into the workplace? Or was it in the nicest way, a tick box exercise?
No, it was. I deliberately did it in something. So I did. It was in business and enterprise. So it was around kind of. Again, a lot of it was about innovation, actually, innovation in business. So no, I have actually taken quite a lot from it over the years, because it was talking. I mean, there's the textbook stuff. It's Porter's 5 Forces and all that type of thing, and then 6 hats thinking. But that's stuff that I would never have heard about before necessarily, and probably may not have heard about afterwards. And some of that critical thinking that you pick up with a degree, I think I do continue to use it, because it's just structuring your thinking. That's the biggest thing I took away from it, was you structure your thinking and you become interested in things that you otherwise might just completely bypass you, because it's just that it's over there and you just don't know it exists. So again, it just opened up my eyes a little bit to what was out there in terms of even really daft things like Harvard Business Review and McKinsey and stuff like that. I'd never even heard of them before, probably until I did my degree. And actually, it's the sort of things you read all the time, because there's some really interesting, good stuff in there.
That's really interesting, and it's interesting to hear the story about why you did it in the first place, but also, yeah, what you got from having done that degree. So you're at Dyson. Yep. You are head of customer service at Dyson.
Yes.
How was that?
It was good. It was tough. It was a tough environment. It's the commercially the most commercial organisation I've worked for. I was on a really steep learning curve there, because I've come in from OVO where budgets and things like that, it wasn't really what you focused on. It was just, okay, get things done. And suddenly you go into an organisation that's very P&L driven and has certain standards, certain expectations, and maybe that kind of engineering flows through, which is attention to detail and scrutiny. And so it was a really great experience, because it really, really forced me very quickly to sharpen up my commerciality, building a business case, how you structure things, planning. All of that had to become much, much more robust very, very quickly. And we delivered some pretty good stuff while we were there, some really exciting projects and programs while we were there. And then we came through the pandemic, and we went through a complete transformation while we were in the middle of the pandemic as well, which was really, really tough on many respects. But you look back and think, wow, that we did actually deliver quite a lot more in that period.
Interesting. And then from there, you went to something, I'm going to say something completely different. And I remember when you called me and you said, right, I'm off to Ruroc. And I went, where? Who? It's like, Dyson to Ruroc. Tell me more about it. Why did you go to Ruroc? What was it that attracted you?
Do you know, Ruroc was it was a contact that came out of the blue. I wasn't in that phase of kind of looking or anything else. And it was, hi, we make safety gear in the motorbike and snowboarding industries, and you instantly go, okay, hello, this end. You're automatically sounding quite cool. Yeah, like Dyson Technology is very clever and very, 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 very cool in its space, but it's not a motorbike. It's not the motorbike and snowboarding industry.
And you're a biker.
Yeah. Well, do you know, I wasn't. I now have I've got my CBT now. I'm not a full biker yet, but I really, really want to be in the fullness of time. I've still got my aspirations to do it. They were just a completely different company. Dyson Global, 12 and a half, 13,000 people. Roark was 150 people in a warehouse in Gloucester. But clearly, and had gone through some insane growth, really different industry. And I just wanted to go and challenge myself in that startup space. Again, it's this magpie nature of going, okay, I want to try something different. I want to try something different and do something different. And so I went to Roark, and that was a blast. It really was. There was some really exciting, some really real fun. You just spent the whole time. It was just a big grin on my face for the whole time I was there in one way or another. Again, it was tough because you're in that startup environment. And you probably having to get your hands dirty in a way that you don't in a big corporate company, because you're so much more connected to the teams and so much more connected to the customers. You feel really accountable for every single helmet that you ship, and it doesn't get there. You feel it much more closely because it's one of 1,000 you ship that month, not one of a million units that you might sell within a company like Dyson. So that experience really, really counts, and that customer experience that you build has to be absolutely on point.
And what's fascinating is that having, and again, you know, we reflected halfway through your career, the brands that you've been with, and after Roark, you're at AXA, and AXA, on the face of it, seems, oh, that's quite different to Roark and Dyson and OVO because of its point in history. Why AXA? What was it that attracted you to AXA?
So it's the diversity of the role. The stuff I outlined at the start, where the role that I've got is not an easy role to pigeonhole. When you've got something that is effectively 9 completely different roles in one, I like variety. I like that dynamism. I like the challenge of having to continually context switch in almost every meeting and conversation you're in. And so when the AXA opportunity came along, it was frankly, it was just too good to turn down. It really was, and it was. There's bits of it you miss, that kind of freedom that you've got within a small startup like Roark, and you could just go completely buck wild and do crazy stuff while we were there. But actually, the variety and the challenge and the learning curve. But to come back to the why does AXA Health exist? Well, actually, it helps people get better. It helps people who are going through a difficult period. They've got the private medical insurance and all the services that AXA Health offer, and we're here to help people recover. Ultimately, that's kind of the why. We look after people, and that really does. It genuinely does resonate. And when some of the experiences that I listen to and talk to some of the teams, it blows me away the job that they do. So yeah, it was just that opportunity to do something different and a really different role.
So across your career, we've talked about having a blast in some places and the opportunities in others. What is it that you think makes a great place to work? What's really worked for you?
The biggest thing for me is that the company has to kind of walk the walk when it comes to looking after customers and people. It's really easy to say, oh, we're a customer-centric organization, and a lot of companies say it, but they don't mean it. Because when the decision has to be made, profit might come first, or something will come over the needs of the customer, or more, and just as importantly, actually, the needs of its teams. And I think really good companies are the ones that balance that. They put their customers first and put their people first, because they recognise that, do you know what? If you look after your people, you look after your customers, your company is going to be fine in the long run. And it's a really basic kind of philosophy. It's nothing particularly groundbreaking with that, but it works. It's kind of true for a reason, I guess.
And it's so true. And it's and you've got to have that innovation. And I guess that's one of the things that is a clear thread through your career, is having that innovative thinking and being able to continue to look after colleagues and customers innovatively, differently, because they change. So it's keeping that piece. I'm curious, throughout your career, what do you feel has been your greatest achievement?
You know, it's always a question you get asked in interview a lot of the time. Greatest achievement is a really difficult one for me, because by nature I always look forward, not backwards. I'm quite, that's just like my personality type, I guess. The biggest achievement, obviously winning being part of the team that won the awards, the X's and the CCNAs.
Obviously.
Do you know, I think looking back, actually, I can look back at that. It's almost there's too many to name, because actually it's looking back and going, where did we transform something? That's what I'm really passionate about. It's transformation. It's changing things. I love change. I thrive in that space. I openly say I'm no good as a BAU leader. If you just want BAU, I'm the wrong person for it. If you want to change and innovate, that's what I'm all about. So looking back at some of the projects we've delivered, whether we went from having a man in a van delivery model at Dyson to doing that digitally via video. That was a huge transformation. And I look back and go, wow, that's pretty cool, actually. And there are a lot of examples like that where we built something that didn't exist, had a vision, created it, and moved on. And that's the stuff that I really do look back with pride on.
Nice, I love that. And you must have been given all sorts of advice along the way. You've name dropped some fantastic business leaders. What advice do you recall receiving that maybe changed your approach a little bit?
Do you know that there's a couple? I think the first one for me is really about not letting your emotions always guide you. I'm quite outgoing. We did our insights profiles this week, so I know that I'm quite a passionate person about stuff. But actually, being prepared to take that step back, slow down, not let your emotions rule you, and that was a piece of advice I received a long time ago. I don't always manage to stick to it 100%, as my teams will attest to. But actually, just being really rational, really logical, and giving yourself that opportunity to breathe. There's that. The other thing is, the other advice I've had is you don't have to be 24/7. You don't have to be switched on and relentless 24/7. And I've gone through phases in my career when I have been completely relentless and thought about work 24/7, and it's dominated me. And actually, getting to the point where you can step back and say, do you know what? I'm better off when I take time to myself, when I energize, when I spend more time with my family, when I recharge the batteries. I'm much more effective for it. So again, when I've had that advice, it was something I really went, actually, yeah, you're right, because you can otherwise it can consume you, and you become less effective. So
it's funny, Andy, when you shared your insights profile online, you and I are the same, that same insights profile, and yeah, it's that. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm quite an emotional person. I can get really emotional about the awards and hearing the impact that it has on people. But similar to you, I can be absolutely relentless at work. I can think about it 24/7, and I wonder if it maybe we are of a generation that actually it's come with age, that actually we can recognize that it's okay to stop, and maybe those that are 10, 20 years younger than us, they haven't yet seen that. Or alternatively, what we're seeing is they recognize it a lot earlier than we did.
I think that might be it. I do think that might be it. Yeah, it's kind of, it feels like we're falling into two camps these days. There's the hustle culture, which is you've got to be up at 4 a.m. and do a workout and do this, and you've got to be 24/7. And I hope that that's changing, because you can work hard, but you can still find time for yourself and your family and your friends and the other things that are outside of your work. Because work, you can be really passionate about your work, and you can be kind of devoted to it and work really, really, really hard. But it shouldn't necessarily define who you are as a person. It will shape you naturally, but it shouldn't define who you are as a human. And I think I've let it at periods in my life. I probably have let it do that, and I actively don't anymore, and feel I'm better for it and more effective on behalf of me, my teams, and everything else.
What do you do outside of work? Is that are there? How do you chill out? How do you relax? How do you switch off from work?
I mean, I'm not. Genuinely, I'm not that interested in a guy. I walk the dog. Like I live in the countryside. I love the countryside. I love fresh air. So I walk the dog. I exercise. That's the biggest thing for me. I went through a period of my life when I didn't do anything and was reliving I was a big drinker, smoker, and everything else in my 20s. And actually, I now don't do any of that. I try to exercise because I find that keeps me happier and healthier, and clearer headed. And again, it's just making sure I'm spending time with friends and family. That's the thing that really does energize me. It's just being around them and just being able to be being a better version of me for them I think is really, really important. It's something that I've discovered over the years that maybe I didn't in my younger days. Because that just, like you say, doing all of that stuff, just exercising, fresh air, switching off, spending time with people that you love and you enjoy being around. That's a good thing. It just works.
That's so good. That's so good. Now I could keep chatting to you for ages, but I'm going to bring it to a close. But before I do, I've got 3 quick questions for you.
Okay.
Harley or Ducati?
Ducati.
Oh, why?
It's just, they're just cool. Like there's no other reason. Harleys are really cool as well, but Ducatis, they're sexy. They're just really, really cool. It's just the Italianness of them is just brilliant.
Love it. Football or rugby?
Rugby every day of the week. That's my sport. That's what I played for many years when I wasn't injured. But yeah, I played a lot of rugby. Definitely rugby.
And do you have a hidden talent?
Do you know, I was thinking about this, and I really wish I did. It's so hidden, I haven't discovered it yet. But maybe that's all part of that journey through life. I'll discover that maybe I've got a talent for singing that I just haven't quite found my pitch or something yet. So no, sadly, I don't have a hidden talent that I've found yet, but I'll keep searching. Keep
searching. Andy, thank you so much for joining me on Career Talk. Really, really appreciate you giving us some time and walking through your amazing career. And I've learned so much about you. And you know, I've known you for a few years, but just hearing that innovation piece really through your career and your passion for this industry, your passion for customers, your passion for colleagues is just really shining through. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. And thank you guys for listening. You can catch up on all of our career talks through the CCMA website. So check us out there and we'll see you soon.